Someone is grinding a lump of red rock into powder. It's tens of thousands of years ago, and they are working with real focus, crushing the deep red stone against a flat slab, adding a little fat, a little water, mixing it into a smooth, blood-red paste. And then they lift a finger, and they begin to carefully spread that red across their own skin, their cheeks, their forehead, maybe their arms. This is not an accident. This is not a smudge of dirt. This is deliberate, practiced, and it means something. You are watching one of the oldest beauty rituals on Earth. Except, here's the thing that's going to reframe this entire video. It probably wasn't about beauty at all. This is the story of when humans started wearing makeup, and I promise you, it is far older, far stranger, and far more meaningful than you think. Because when you hear the word makeup today, you think of one thing: looking good, beauty, self-expression, a morning routine, a mirror, a way to feel more confident or attractive. And that's absolutely what makeup is for most people now. But that is a very recent way of understanding something incredibly ancient. For most of human history, painting your face and body was not primarily about looking pretty. It was about survival. It was about protection. It was about telling the world without a single word exactly who and what you were. Makeup was one of the first languages humans ever spoke, and it was written on the skin. Let's start with the evidence because it is genuinely staggering how far back this goes. The star of this story is a substance called ochre. Ochre is a naturally occurring earth pigment, rich in iron oxide, and it comes in earthy reds, yellows, and browns. And it is, without exaggeration, one of the most important materials in the entire human story. Because everywhere we look in the ancient past, we find ochre. We find lumps of it carried across huge distances. We find it ground into powder. We find grinding stones stained red with it. We find it in graves, in caves, on tools. And crucially, we find worked pieces of ochre that look almost exactly like crayons, with faceted, rubbed-down edges, as if they were used over and over to draw or mark something, possibly skin. And this goes back a very, very long way. We have evidence of humans collecting and processing ochre from tens of thousands of years ago, and in some cases, the evidence stretches back over 100,000 years. In one remarkable discovery, archaeologists found what looked like a complete ochre processing toolkit, containers, grinding tools, the works, dating back around 100,000 years. Think about that. 100,000 years ago, before farming, before cities, before writing, before almost everything we associate with civilization, humans were already running what was essentially a small pigment workshop. They were sourcing raw material, processing it, mixing it, and storing it. This was not casual. This was a technology, and one of the most likely uses for that pigment was putting it on the body. So we know they were doing it. The real question, the interesting question, is why? And the first answer is beautifully practical, because before makeup was ever about looking good, it may have been about not dying. Think about where many of our ancestors lived, out in the open, under a relentless sun. And it turns out that ochre, that same red pigment, has real protective properties. Smeared on the skin, it can act as a natural sunblock, offering some protection from harmful ultraviolet rays. It can also help repel insects, including the kinds that carry disease, and it may have provided a protective barrier against the elements in general. So one of the very first reasons a human might have covered their skin in red pigment was not to turn heads. It was to survive the sun, the bugs, and the harsh outdoors. The first foundation was, quite literally, a survival tool. But of course, it did not stay purely practical, because humans are humans, and we cannot leave anything alone without loading it with meaning. And this is where makeup becomes something extraordinary, because at some point, the color on your skin stopped being just protection and started being a message. Imagine an ancient world with no writing, no ID cards, no uniforms. How do you tell at a glance who someone is, which group they belong to, what their status is, whether they're a leader, a warrior, a healer, someone in mourning, someone ready for battle, someone celebrating? You write it on the most visible surface you own, your face, your body. Specific colors, specific patterns, specific markings became a visual language. A particular design might instantly mark you as a member of one tribe and not another. A certain color might signal that you held a position of power. Another might show you were prepared for war, or that you were part of a sacred ceremony. Makeup became a way of broadcasting your identity to everyone who could see you. It answered the question, who are you, before you ever opened your mouth. And this idea, the face as a canvas for identity, runs incredibly deep. It's why war paint exists across so many cultures that never had contact with one another. Covering the face and body in bold, often frightening patterns before battle did several things at once. It could intimidate the enemy, making a warrior look fierce, inhuman, terrifying, it could create a sense of unity and courage among a group all wearing the same marks. And in many belief systems, it could offer spiritual protection, a kind of armor made not of metal, but of meaning. This is a crucial point. For most of human history, makeup and the spiritual world were deeply intertwined. The markings weren't just decorative or even just social. They were believed to carry real power, to protect you from harm, to connect you to gods or ancestors or spirits, to transform you temporarily into something more than yourself. And nowhere is this blend of the practical, the beautiful, and the spiritual clearer than in ancient Egypt, which gives us some of the most famous makeup in all of history. When you picture an ancient Egyptian, you almost certainly picture those dramatic dark-lined eyes. That was kohl, a dark paste often made from ground minerals, and it was worn by men and women alike. And here's what's wonderful about kohl. It was all of the things at once. Yes, it was cosmetic, it was considered beautiful, and it was a mark of sophistication, but it was also practical. That dark pigment around the eyes helped reduce the glare of the harsh desert sun, functioning a bit like the black stripes an athlete might wear today. And some research suggests certain kohl formulations may have even had properties that helped protect the eyes against infection, which, along the banks of a river full of bacteria, could have been genuinely life-saving. And on top of all that, it was spiritual. The eye in Egyptian belief was deeply symbolic and protective. Lining the eyes was, in part, a way of invoking protection from the gods. So, a single swipe of ancient eyeliner could be, all at the same time, beauty, sun protection, medicine, and a prayer. That is makeup working on every level a human cares about all at once. Now, I promised you this story had a darker side, and it does, because the same drive that led humans to decorate themselves also led them, sometimes, to poison themselves. For much of history, people did not understand the chemistry of what they were putting on their skin, and some of the substances used to achieve a particular look were genuinely dangerous. Some cultures, at various points in history, used cosmetics containing toxic substances, including things like lead, to whiten the skin or create certain effects. Over time, these could cause real harm, damaging the skin, and with prolonged use, causing serious illness. People were, in a sense, slowly harming themselves in the pursuit of a look that their culture told them was desirable. And that points at a shadow that hangs over the whole history of cosmetics, right up to the present day. Because makeup has never been purely free self-expression. It has always been tangled up with pressure, expectation, standards imposed by society about what a face is supposed to look like. The line between decorating yourself because you want to and altering yourself because you feel you have to has always been blurry. And throughout history, that pressure has often fallen unequally, shaped by power, by gender, by status, dictating who is expected to paint themselves and how and why. So while makeup can be joyful, creative, and empowering, a way of taking control of your own image, it has also, at times, been a cage. A set of rules about acceptability that people felt they could not escape. The face you present to the world has never been entirely your own choice, and that tension is ancient too. So let's step back and ask the big question. Why? Why have humans, in every corner of the globe for 100,000 years, felt this deep compulsion to change the appearance of their own faces and bodies? And I think when you gather up all the threads, protection, identity, status, ritual, beauty, belonging, they all point back to something fundamental about what we are. We are the animal that is not content to simply be. We are the creature that transforms. Think about it. No other animal looks at itself and decides to become something else. A bird cannot choose to be more colorful for a ceremony, but a human can look at their own bare face and see not a fixed fact, but a canvas, a starting point, something that can be changed to say, I am powerful, I am ready for war, I am protected by my gods, I belong to these people, I am transformed. This is who I have chosen to be today. Makeup is the physical expression of one of the most human ideas of all. The idea that we are not stuck being exactly what nature made us, that we can take the raw material of ourselves and shape it and add meaning to it. The face becomes the first canvas, and the self becomes something we get to help create. So, when did ancient humans start wearing makeup? The honest answer is that it is so old we cannot find its true beginning. It stretches back at least 100,000 years, to a time when humans were grinding red ochre in what were essentially the first cosmetic workshops on Earth. It began almost certainly as something practical, a shield against the sun and the insects in the world. And then it became everything else. It became a language, letting people announce who they were without a word. It became a uniform, marking tribe and rank and readiness for battle. It became armor, a spiritual defense against unseen forces. It became art, and eventually, in our own time, it became the deeply personal thing we know today, a way of expressing or protecting or reinventing the self. The specific pigments changed. The reasons and the rules changed. The meanings shifted from survival to spirit to status. to self. But the underlying impulse, the urge to reach for a bit of color and reshape the face we were born with, is one of the oldest and most human things there is. It was already ancient when the first cities rose. It was already ancient when the first words were written down. So the next time you watch someone carefully applying makeup or do it yourself in front of a mirror, running late, not thinking much about it, pause for just a second and recognize what you're actually part of. You are performing a ritual that is at least 100,000 years old. You are doing what an ancient human did, grinding red ochre by a fire, painting their skin with meaning. You are reaching for the same thing they reached for, to protect yourself, to express yourself, to signal who you are, to transform into the version of yourself you want the world to see. The mirror is new, the pigments are new, but the impulse, that deep human need to write meaning onto our own faces, is almost as old as humanity itself. We have always wanted to be more than just our bare faces, and we have been saying so in color for a very, very long time. If you made it this far, you're my kind of person. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you around the next ancient fire. Take care.